Ewok, always on the ball, has our Bitcoin chart up for us already, so we can take a look at that. Now, here's what we're going to talk about here. So Ewok and I, this is going to make for good television, okay? And of course, if you have any comments, questions, or whatever in the chat tonight, go ahead and hit us up. We'll definitely get to them at some point. But Ewok and I are on different planes at this point. So for a long time throughout the bear market, we were pretty much in agreement at, thinking that we would get a low of a low teens Bitcoin, maybe 12K or something like that. Ewok has kind of been thinking 10 or 11K or something. I mean, kind of splitting hairs at that point. Both of us thought that the new lows would come in November after the initial lows in June for BTC. So far, we were dead on about that. 15.3K or so has been the low in this crypto bear market for Bitcoin. Of course, the FTX garbage and SBF and all that stuff back in November, the sky was falling. Then we had been in agreement that we'd see even further, maybe new lows here in January. That has not happened. It is pretty much guaranteed not to happen with 1 week here left in the month. And I, for one, I'm no longer a team player. I've abandoned ship bear and turned pretty bullish, not just because of the recent price action, but also just because of time that we've been in this bear market, which been, well over a year at this point. Matter of fact, if you really want to mark it maybe from, May of 2021, the first of the double top, I mean, we're way out. I'm more akin to, probably call it November of 2021 would have been the start after that descent. But either way, I mean, we are at least 14 or so months out now into this bear market. And the sentiment is still majority bearish everywhere that I look. And it is narrowing. A couple of weeks ago, I would have told you 60-40 or 70-30. It looked bearish. We're getting more towards kind of like 55-45, maybe still 60-40. But I'm still seeing mainly bearish sentiment out there. Jim Cramer and everybody else, of course, just telling you to dump all your crypto and everything. But yeah, I think the bottom is in. I at this point, I feel probably 90% confident of that. Of course, you could always be wrong, and I'm willing to ride, whatever direction we go. Ewok, I know you disagree, so let's get to the juicy stuff. Why do you disagree, you think, at this point, and what are you kind of seeing here as we look at the Bitcoin chart?
Well, I don't see enough volume. I think there's something fishy going on with the markets. There's not enough positive sentiment to be sending it up to these prices. There's not enough buyers. There's not enough volume. I think it's a lot of wash trading by some bigger players who possibly want some exit liquidity. And I think that might be our catalyst down, I would say even 50% from here. And that would still get us into that price target that I was talking about earlier. So that's my theory. I think there's some bigger whales that need to unload, and they're doing some finagling and shady things going on with the markets. It's not hard to manipulate it, really not when you have exchanges that are, willing to play the game. So that's just, that's my theory. I think there's a bigger fish out there that wants to sell a big bag. They're doing this on purpose, wash trading, whatever, to raise the price, to build some liquidity so that when they do sell, it's at a higher price, and there are some buy orders that are set now, hoping that it won't get through there on its way back down. Just my thought process here.
Now, something I would want to ask you then, because something I mentioned there too, is at some point I want to also focus on time instead of just price. And with how far we are out, and I'll admit, and it's not because of like the person that created them or anything like that, but I am a big fan and think there's a lot of validity to Bob Lucas's 4-year cycles. I mean, they just have done a phenomenal job of playing out so far. And I know he basically pivoted and was largely thinking that the bottom was in back when we were last at 17K. I guess it would have been like the beginning of this year, probably. But I want to direct to you. I mean, like, so if we do take another 50% haircut, or hey, let's even just say at this point, let's just say like retouching the lows already. So getting to about 15K flat. I mean, what is your time frame here? Do you think this happens next month? You know, where do you think this happens, and when do you think the actual turnaround, if we aren't already in it, would start to happen?
Well, so here's another thing too. You know, we have never had that massive of a double top that is what, from April to November. So that's new. It doesn't have to play out this time the same way as it always has. And I think, especially with what's going on in the macro, it could take a while. It could take us until even May, June, until it truly finds another bottom and goes back down. I don't know, or it could play out a lot faster. It could happen in March. I don't think it'll happen in February. It's too quick, unless we see another, major downfall of another exchange, right, that actually really does lead to selling this time. We've talked about it before, and I don't think FTX had a whole lot to do with any of the downfall other than sentiment, because there wasn't a whole lot of selling. Now, we'll see how those court cases play out. We'll see how the Genesis thing plays out. There's still a lot of things to play out. Plus, you still have, what is it, May or June until the Gox coins come out. I think that's going to have an effect. I really do. It may be good for them too if the price does. What if the price is up at 25? Those people are going to dump. They're going to dump hard. So, I think I just think this whole thing could be very delayed. We had a bottom back, back here. What was this? November. It was right around that, 1 year point. And I think it's kind of a fake out from the top. So, I could see us bouncing around up in here. I did draw another blue line of where I think there could be some more support. It's going to take a lot to break through that. If we get through that, then I would say my theory is pretty much shot.
25. That's what I was thinking about.
250, 25, 290, and around there.
Or not far off. I mean, that's 2,000
it's
away for Bitcoin, but
it's not. And there is some support in there, or resistance in there as well. Not a whole lot, but that's just my next target. If we bust through that, then I may have to change my mind. But I still think there's something really shady. There's just not a whole lot of volume like we saw when things were really ramping up and starting to rise the last time. It's very minuscule as to what it was back here when this run started. There was just a lot more excitement. You can see by the volume candles down here of what kind of got it going. And we're just not seeing that over here. It's not there. So I'm just not sold. And again, if everybody flips to being bullish, you could still be that contrarian and say, nope, I still think we're going down, and be right. So, we'll see. My theory, I think there's a big player that's manipulating it right now. And they want some exit liquidity. Who knows? It may be Grayscale.
Let me ask you this. So I want to challenge you on something you said there. So you said that, this cycle has been different than last cycle, and, like the double top was different and everything like that. And, it doesn't mean everything the same is going to happen. How would you kind of navigate that in terms of why does Bitcoin have to go down, whatever it is, 85% again? So why do we have to go to 10, 11, 12K then? Because to me, it would kind of seem like there was a lot of people who thought, and not just a lot. I'm not talking about like the fair weather, just showed up for the bull market people. I mean, like actual crypto people that are involved in the market, even last November or 2 Novembers ago now in 2021, that when we were in the 60s for BTC, still had a thesis that by the spring or so, we could see 3-digit BTC. And I'm not talking about moon boys. I'm talking about like traders and stuff like that saw something like that even in the short term. So, one could argue that maybe we got stopped out early that time. So why do we have to necessarily go down 85% again? I mean, it's already been pretty far. I mean, 10 to 12K is not all that far off from 15K, especially 12K, obviously. But yeah, so I would challenge you on that. I guess, like, why, if it is different, I mean, do we have to go down 85% again? Because, as the returns for Bitcoin diminish as these cycles go on, which it's inevitably doing. I mean, it is doing that. We're about to go into our 5th Bitcoin cycle. If you're a Bitcoin maxi at this point, you're not going to make more money than people that are into altcoins that are good. You're just not going to. But yeah, so what do you think about that? Because to me, it would make sense that, like, the asset, as it gets up there in age, would start to kind of compress a little bit in terms of the tops and bottoms. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, it just hasn't done that yet. I mean, we've done 85% dips on at least every cycle that there has been so far. Mm-hmm. And until it doesn't, I think that, would prove the theory of why will it do that? Well, it has every cycle. So
right.
That's not saying it's going to, not a guarantee, obviously, but they're usually pretty similar with retracements, with the amount that it pulls back in order to flush all the bad stuff out. And I think that's usually in crypto what it takes, at least for Bitcoin, as established as it's been. Now, you bring up a good point. The longer we get in these markets, I think the less volatile it could be. However, when you have all of that shady stuff going on, you still got to flush them out. You still got to get that cleared for a fresh slate in order to start the run back up. And that's just my theory. It'll do it until it doesn't. So.
Right. Well, I definitely, it's an interesting conversation. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that I think most market participants are pretty split on this. I mean, it is getting closer, though. I mean, again, I think it's the price and the time. It's not just the fact that we've had a couple of really good weeks here. It's also just that, at some point, it's like with a lot of these things happening. And yeah, I agree with what you said. And we have talked about it with FTX. There might not have been tons and tons of actual sell pressure from FTX at that point or anything. But with going back to the sentiment, because I love looking, and if you have the psychology of a market cycle there and would like to pull it up, I'll kind of transition us over here in a moment. But, if I lost my train of thought right there. So yeah, so all these events happening, Genesis, all these other platforms that are having issues and stuff like that, sentiment wise, it just doesn't, I mean, the story can be whatever it is, and maybe they can actually do their own sell-offs. But sentiment-wise, I don't think people really care about almost anything that can happen in crypto at this point. It's just that if sentiment and panic selling during FTX was the majority of the selling, I just don't see, if that carried us that low, I just can't see how, sentiment-wise, again, we could have anything that would surpass that at this point, barring, dare I say, World War III or something like that. I just, can't see, some kind of black swan event to that level is what I think it would take. So, yeah. And not only that,
again, we can't forget, though, that this is the first time that we've been in a very down macro environment at the same time as a Bitcoin, or as the crypto cycle happens. You have to figure that in too. Does that delay it? What does it actually do, to the overall grand scheme of things? Does it make it last a lot longer? And I guess, it's yet to be seen, because it's never happened yet. So we're still in uncharted territory, so to speak, until this whole recession kind of pulls through. So you gotta keep that in mind as well.